Why should men be concerned with their testosterone levels, even if they're not interested in being super jacked?
Because testosterone does not make you super jacked, number one. So a lot of guys will think, oh, I can just hop on TRT and turn into a bodybuilder, which is not the case. Even bodybuilders who are on big dosages of testosterone still have to go to the gym, still have to diet, still have to do all the things. So guys should be concerned because having low testosterone is something that puts guys at a bigger risk of all cause mortality. So cardiovascular issues, cancers, other things, joint problems, osteoporosis, like a lot of those things. And quality of life is a big one. So most guys associate testosterone with muscles and erections, basically, and that's it. And there's so much more that goes into it. So if you want to have the mental clarity that you had maybe in your 20s or early 30s, and you want to be able to make decisions the way that you can, instead of lamenting or being indecisive, and you want to be able to sleep and recover and just feel like yourself, then you should probably be concerned with it.
I know you've worked and you coach like a lot of men. Like you're like, somebody who's known as the queen of men's health. Let's take the muscle building out of this conversation for the time being. What is like the main reason your male clients want to increase their testosterone when they come to you outside of the muscle thing?
It actually is rarely for muscles. Most guys who listen to my content, because I talk all the time about how if you think you're going to go on testosterone and look like this, you're wrong. So that is a approach that guys will take. So when they come into like our ecosystem, they know that they have to do other things in order to look a certain way. So most guys come to us concerned about their testosterone because they have that low quality of life. They don't feel like they used to. They struggle to lose body fat, and they're gaining body fat in places they never used to before, like maybe the love handles or the lower back. And they don't have like that same vitality or the same drive. And it doesn't mean necessarily sex drive. That can mean at work. It can mean at home, where they've poured so much into their career and maybe having kids and like all of that. And they put everybody first before themselves. And then they get to the point where they're like, okay, I don't feel great and I have no energy. Sex drive could be impacted, but they're just like, I don't feel like I'm living the quality of life that I could be. And it might be a hormonal thing.
And before we get into like what you believe are some of the biggest causes of low testosterone and how people can naturally like bring their levels up, I think one of the biggest limiting beliefs of people is they will say it's just my genetics, or I'm just getting older and that's what happens. What are your thoughts on that? And like, if you were to kind of give like a rough estimate of the percentage of testosterone issues that are actually quote unquote genetic versus lifestyle?
0 for genetic. I can say that with confidence. I don't know where that comes from, but people do ask me, they're like, is there a genetic component to it? I'm like, no. It does come from, so basically, like, to give context, testosterone levels have decreased 1% per year since 1982. So it's over 40 years that it's drastically been decreased. And so when we used to say, oh, he probably has the testosterone levels of like a 20-year-old, that doesn't mean anymore, because a lot of 20-year-olds are walking around with sub 400 test levels. And a lot of guys think that it's not something they need to address until they get into maybe their 50s or 60s. And that used to be the case, but it's not so much anymore. I mean, we've seen guys like 18, 19 and over who have suboptimal testosterone levels simply from the fact that we live a much more sedentary lifestyle than when I was growing up in the 80s. Like I was always playing outside. Kids don't do that so much anymore. Obesity is a huge driver of this. People don't move as much anymore, so they don't live as how we were supposed to evolve to live, which is moving around and being active and eating high quality food and getting enough sleep. All the things that we just beat with a dead horse over and over in the fitness industry, because it really is that. It's not like, oh, you're missing this secret supplement that no one's telling you about, or, some vitamin that like is only available like on a Chinese website or something. Like that's not it. And the exposure to, toxic stuff in our environment, and everyone says, oh, toxins. Like I personally hate that word because like people use it very cavalier, like, oh, get rid of toxins. Like, what does that even mean? But we are exposed to things, excuse me, that disrupt our hormones. And that lives in plastics, plastic containers, water. We're exposed to this stuff all the time. And we're starting to realize that it's a problem. So combine that with leading a sedentary lifestyle, having too much body fat, drinking alcohol, not confronting the truth of what you look like in the mirror, accepting the fact that having more body fat than we should is okay. Those are all reasons that are going to create an environment that are going to be suboptimal low T.
And before, again, we get into like the nitty gritty, there's different types of testosterone, right? There's testosterone, there's free testosterone. Like talk about the different forms of it that somebody might be familiar with from like a lab test or something, and the ones that matter most and why.
So most labs, I don't want to say most labs. So like if somebody goes to a primary care physician or GP, they're not going to test sex hormones. But if they do, they'll test total testosterone. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. So it's like telling, if you go to a trainer at the gym, like my left ankle flexes or flexibility is fantastic. That's great. What about the rest of your body? So it's only like one piece of what is functioning in your body. There's so many other markers that you have to look at. So free testosterone is the actual testosterone that's usable in your body at that moment, where it can be bound by a few different things. So there's ways to measure that in labs, but a lot of people live by their total T number. Like, oh, my total T is 700. I've seen guys like 600, 700, 800 total testosterone, and their free testosterone is through the floor. So it doesn't mean that their total testosterone is useless. It's just that they're not really accessing the testosterone that they should be able to, which comes in the form of free testosterone. And that alone also is not, the full picture, because like my hormone panel has 86 different markers on it. I want to know everything because everything affects everything. Testosterone and thyroid affect each other. Looking at things like blood glucose, inflammation, like all those things are affected. And I can tell, like if a guy has low T in his labs, and you usually see higher cholesterol or lipid markers. Sometimes thyroid is suppressed. Sometimes blood sugar or hemoglobin A1C is a little bit elevated, which are things that can be corrected through diet and training, but are typically analogous with a low testosterone hormone profile.
And so what do you think is like the biggest thing that causes low testosterone in men?
Honestly, like a low quality lifestyle. Alcohol, so drinking every week, not exercising, not eating good quality food, pretty much are the biggest drivers. And then carrying more than 15% body fat, in my opinion.
And it's tough too, right? Because I think the more body fat you have, it makes it, it lowers your testosterone, which then makes it harder to lose body fat. So it's like you're on this like spinning wheel, right? And it's so hard to get off of it because so many people lose confidence or belief in themselves because they're not seeing results, right? So if somebody's coming to you right now and they have low T and their lifestyle is crap, just like we've discussed, What's like the process like of them getting back to a place of feeling like themselves again?
So there's a few different things at play here. So usually, like when clients come to us, we do blood work pretty much within the first few weeks. So when that comes back, if it's really deep in the hole low, like we're talking, maybe 300 and below, which their free T is going to be pretty much non-existent. And their lifestyle is not the best. There are several things to correct. So we know that we can handle the exercise, the nutrition, a lot of the lifestyle modifications, the personal development, all that stuff. Now, whether or not they're a candidate for TRT depends on how long they've been like this. So most guys don't get labs every year like they should. So we're working with our initial baseline of here I am, this is where I'm at. So sometimes if they're extremely low and we see that their LH and their FSH, which is luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, are high, those are the hormones that talk to the testicles that say, yo, produce testosterone. We need more. We need more. We need more. And they're high because they're trying to talk to the testicles to do that. And the testosterone's not coming up. It pretty much means like their balls are tapped out. So they're probably not going to go up very high in the next 1 to 2 years. So no matter what, if somebody goes on TRT or doesn't, you still have to address the lifestyle factors, the nutrition, and the training part, because it doesn't mean testosterone is going to save you and be the panacea where all of a sudden all that's going to be corrected and then you're going to feel and look amazing. You still have to do the work. But in like the chicken or the egg scenario, testosterone might be the thing that can help get that guy off the couch to get this stuff done. If he's borderline low, so like I consider that, maybe like for upper 400s to 500s, maybe 6, doesn't feel great, but his lifestyle's a mess. The discussion is had around TRT and what their thoughts are, concerns, all of that. But we absolutely exhaust everything we can lifestyle wise to get him into a better position so that when he goes on testosterone, it's a good experience. Not that it's really a bad experience for anyone who has gone on, but pretty much that you can clean up a lot of things and it might bring it up a little bit. But I always tell guys, like I can tell right away on labs, I'm like, all right, you're sitting here, you've tried XYZ, even cleaning up your lifestyle, maybe we'll bump it up a few 100 points. Would you feel a difference? Not really. But would you put all your other metabolic health markers in a better place? Absolutely. So I think too often guys are quick to just shoot for wanting to go on TRT without addressing everything else that comes with it.
Yeah, and I think it's also that, addressing the other things takes work. And it's tough, right? You have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I got to put in work and I have to change these things. And I'm not going to necessarily see results right away because these things take time. And before we get into like specific nutrition and exercise protocols for this, I know one of the things that robs people of having healthy testosterone is stress. Talk about the relationship between cortisol and testosterone.
So having high cortisol like all day long can suppress testosterone levels because like the easiest analogy I've ever used, and this could be for gym rats or anybody, like if you're at the gym and you're going for a PR in any type of lift, like pretend you're under the bar for a squat. So heaviest back squat you've ever done and you're coming out of the hole and you're like shaking and your eyes are bulging, you're turning purple. It's a very, very stressful environment because you're grinding just to get up. That impact of stress, your brain doesn't know that you're squatting 400 pounds or you're just stressed. So the ability for a man to pop a boner at the time that he's coming into the end of a back squat PR is highly unlikely. So that's similar to the impact stress has on your body. When your body is stressed all the time, it's just trying to make you survive. It's not thinking, oh, I'm going to procreate. So I'm going to produce all the right hormones to make that happen. So similar situation, like if someone has a deadline at work and like a guy's really focused on his laptop and he's got to get this done. And, his wife like is like, yo, let's go right now. To like shift gears for guys like that, it's just very difficult. So that is the impact that your brain has on lowering testosterone. And in labs, we would see lower levels of LH and FSH because it's kind of suppressed and the body's not calling on itself to produce testosterone because it's in fight or flight mode.
Have you ever seen anything like work to lower like cortisol on labs, like any kind of like practices like meditation, therapy, anything like that?
Meditation like can be useful. Getting a guy to do it is the hard part. So there's a lot of practitioners that like to give cortisol lowering supplements. Personally, I'm not a fan of it because cortisol is not the enemy. There's times we want it to be high and there's times that we don't want it to be high. So it's really, you still have to correct everything else that is causing that to happen. So, I explain to people like the reason why we like to have carbohydrates after training is because insulin goes up and insulin opposes cortisol. So it brings it down. Because cortisol you want high when you're training because it works very well with other stress hormones as well as like growth hormone, testosterone, everything that goes up during training. But you don't want it to stay there after training, so we want to bring it down. So insulin opposes cortisol. So that's why when people diet really hard and really low carb, they stress themselves out. They gain water retention and they think that they're gaining fat and then they freak out and then they cut their calories even lower, which causes more water retention from the cortisol, when literally you can just eat a bunch of carbs and then all of a sudden you'll lose 2 to 3 pounds overnight because your body's like, whoosh, like the whoosh effect. So I forgot where I was going on that tangent.
Talking about stress.
Oh, yeah. So basically, it's not necessarily the Band-Aid of taking a supplement. It's what are the behaviors that you're doing all day during the day that maybe we don't need to be stressed out. Like if we're mainlining caffeine and nicotine and stimulants, then that's going to keep us in a more elevated, stressful state. So meditation can definitely help, but it's also different for everybody. Like for me, meditating is walking. A lot of people like walking. Walking is like the easiest way to lower cortisol. It's like the only form of cardio that does not raise cortisol levels.
And so what do you think are some of the biggest like nutrition changes that guys should make if they want to raise their testosterone?
The majority of guys that come to us need to eat more. So there are a lot of guys, like if you're overweight and if you're obese, obviously we need to change things around, lower the calories. Usually it's a misalignment between the macros. It's protein is like, they claim it's high. It's not. A lot of guys still like live on the low carb train. So they cut carbs so low, they increase their fat and like they log food and their fat is astronomical. It's like 150 grams. Protein is like moderate, but it's not really that high. And then carbs are like next to nothing. And then they're trying to do like jujitsu on top of multiple workouts and all this stuff. So we have to bring carbs up a little bit, decrease the fat, keep protein relatively high so that they're actually fed and have energy to support all the activity they're doing. If someone's not doing a lot of activity and they have a lot of body fat to lose, I still wouldn't go super high in fat. I would go super low carb, but not no carb, moderate to low fat, and really high protein so that they feel satiated. Calories naturally will come down. They can strip the body fat off, then get into a healthier state. Then they can start titrating carbs up again because their body can actually utilize it. When you have a lot of body fat, you're not going to really use those carbs because your body's in an inflamed state. So body fat's the most inflammatory tissue. So having more of it's going to create more of an inflammatory state. And that, in essence, is what lowers testosterone too.
And so protein is king here, right? I imagine based on what you're saying. What are some of your favorite high protein foods that you advise people to eat that aren't going to necessarily like lead to a caloric surplus?
It's an educational curve around, like, most guys like steak. So I explain we can't have ribeyes every night, as nice as that would be. And they taste really good. Leaner cuts of steak, filet, sirloin steak, flank steak, stuff like that. Ground beef, you can find like 95.5 or 96.4 lean ground beef. Turkey, fish, shrimp, lobster, egg whites, like, as boring as those are, but deli turkey, if they're, a sandwich person, stuff like that. But usually people get very confused and overwhelmed with, like, what do I eat? So I have a list of foods like protein with high fat, like a ribeye, or 90% ground beef or lower. Protein with a little fat, like sirloin or chicken thighs, or even chicken breast can be categorized under that. And then protein with like zero fat, which is like Greek yogurt, egg whites, shrimp, certain white fishes have like next to no fat in them. So those are all good choices. And then they can kind of play Tetris throughout the day, or they can hire a meal prep company, get meals delivered where they can customize their macros, like Icon meals. There's many different ways, or whey protein shakes are great too. So usually at first guys are like, oh my God, I can't eat this much protein. And I'm like, it's really not that hard. We can do this.
And then have you found like a ballpark way of guys figuring out like how much food they need to eat on a daily basis?
We help them with that. So like usually initially it's a struggle because it's more food than they're used to. Even if the calories are less, it's coming from like actual food. So it's helping them spread it out, because sometimes they'll kind of skimp throughout the day, and then at night they're like cramming and it doesn't help them sleep and they don't really feel that great. So weighing it out on the scale definitely helps with portion size. It's not something someone has to do forever, but it depends on what your goal is. Like if you're okay with losing a little bit of fat, there's many ways where you can even just measure your protein and just know your portion sizes from there. Most people don't do well with that. So if they can confront what they're eating by measuring it for a while, then you can end up like me. I don't really have to track so much, but I still will. But I've tracked for like 20 years. So you can develop like the ability to eyeball it.
So many people are all in or all out, and they feel like once they miss a meal, once they eat something that's not on the quote unquote plan, they're just kind of like done for like a week or two until they feel like crap again and want to get back on the plan. How much wiggle room is there for people when following a meal plan when they have such an important goal like raising their testosterone levels?
I will say the leaner that somebody gets, the easier it is. The easier it is to maintain. So you have a lot of wiggle room when you have a lot of body fat to lose. And it depends on how quickly and what the goal actually is. So it's important to have the conversation when someone says, I want to get jacked and shredded. What does that mean to you? Because that could mean I want 4 abs to show, or that could mean I want 12 abs to show with veins. Completely different process there. So you have to be a little bit more diligent and precise with the veins on your abs than if you just want a 4-pack to show up. But when you get down to a very lean level, and very lean, in my mind, most guys should live between 12 to 15% body fat, even lower, then it's a lot easier to maintain and you can get away with a lot. So I pretty much can eat a donut whenever I want and I don't lose my mind, fly off the handle. I'm an advocate of things that are not seemed as okay in the fitness industry, because there's a lot of people in the fitness industry that talk about eating whole foods, which I think is absolutely a great thing to do. But it's almost like you get demonized if you eat a protein bar or drink a Coke Zero or something. So I do that all the time now to show people you can still look how I do and still eat this stuff. But you have to do all the work first to get yourself in a position where you can do that. So we do like to have a dedicated get people at least 90%. 80-20 is thrown around a lot, but if you actually calculate how many meals 20% is for somebody, it can end up a lot, and it can, push them over.
I'm sipping on a Sunkist Zero right now. So
yeah, like people, and they come at me online all the time, and I'm like, bring it. Like, because I don't claim to be a fitness purist. Like, yeah, I want my clients to eat protein. Does it have to be like the cow next door who ate grass and went through red light therapy and, got a massage and did ayahuasca? Like, no, it doesn't have to be. Just get the protein in.
Speaking of like what you can and can't consume, you mentioned alcohol. I would say alcohol has been something that a lot of people have been talking about, especially like in the last couple of years, as far as the negative, how it negatively impacts your overall health. And essentially, like consuming any alcohol really is there's just no benefit to it. It can just cause bad things. What have you found to be like the impact of alcohol and testosterone?
It will not do your testosterone any favors. So pretty much a lot of people think, well, alcohol, if it's clear, it's safe, it has no calories. All alcohol has 7 calories per gram. So it is a very quick form of energy for your body. So when you take in alcohol, it's like, oh, shit, this is really quick energy, but it's also toxic. So I have to get rid of it and metabolize it right away. So it preferentially gets metabolized. So anything that you eat with it or anything that is mixed in with this drink gets put in like storage for later, because your body's like, oh my gosh, this is a threat to me because it's toxic. So that in itself doesn't necessarily cause fat gain, but it suppresses fat burning, basically. It definitely messes up your sleep. So messing up your sleep is going to lower your testosterone levels, because that's where all the recovery happens. Hormones are manufactured. So I've never met anybody who drinks several times a week and has sky high testosterone levels and feels amazing, unless they're on TRT, of course. That's different if you're actually taking it in. But nobody naturally is producing optimal testosterone levels and is the picture of health when they're drinking several times a day or week or both.
Right. Well, and I think the number one thing it does is it inhibits decision making, right? And it's like, how many times do you hear people talk about how they went out drinking? They either got something out they wouldn't have normally gotten as far as what they ate, or they come home and they're just snacking all night. And then just the recovery process from that is just crap, right? Because now you're like, you can't get up and do that morning workout, or you do, and it's not as good. Maybe it like negatively impacts a relationship. And we all know that like healthy relationships are great for our hormones. So it's like, it could just a cascade of horrible things, right? Yeah.
I mean, it's special occasion type of thing. And then obviously you have to decide what those special occasions are. So I had a client actually last week. He was like, I'm going on a golf trip in the DR with the guys. And I said, okay, how much alcohol will be consumed on this trip? And he's like, all of it. I was like, that's what I thought. So when he got back, I wasn't like, we don't punish ourselves in the gym, because of course, what do they want to do when they get back? They want to do all the cardio twice a day, all that stuff. I actually had him take a day off because he's going to be dehydrated. He's going to feel like shit. So, and we go back and we get back in action with getting the food dialed in, getting back into the gym, and then just moving on with our life. And we have a lot of clients that entertain clients where alcohol is a big part of that. So we navigate that as best we can, where, maybe you substitute soda water so it looks like alcohol, and you eat in a way that mitigates the detriments of alcohol, but it's not going to be perfect. So it's partly meeting the clients where they're at, but also expectation management for them. If this is a weekly thing, then this is what you can expect. But if it's once in a while thing, and then you go on a bender, okay, probably will delay us a little bit, but not the end of the world.
Right. And you brought up a really good point as far as like when people, one of the hardest things, I've been in recovery for over 16 years. One of the hardest things that people have a hard time with, and especially this conversation is especially like relevant with alcohol, is, what are they going to say to somebody when they're out? Like having the courage to just say like, no, like I don't want to drink, or I'm just trying to take care of my health or whatever. And it got me thinking, typically, and there's probably zero correlation, but I mean, this popped into my mind of like, I see people who have a lot of confidence. I'm like, oh, those people probably have higher and healthier levels of testosterone because they feel good about themselves. Is there any kind of correlation between confidence and testosterone, or am I totally just missing this?
I think there's studies that do have that. I can never remember any of them, but you do find, I mean, when guys go on testosterone, you find confidence increases.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about like, okay, like if it were true that you could raise your testosterone levels by becoming more confident in a way, like, what are some ways that somebody can become more confident? And I think, standing up for yourself, I think is a great way to become more confident.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because like guys ask me all the time, what are the best supplements to raise testosterone? Do test boosters work? Like, what can I do? And frankly, there's no real natural way to raise testosterone levels to an optimal level to stay there. So test boosters are a waste of money. On paper, they may raise testosterone maybe like 100 points, but that's not something you're going to feel, nor is it going to stay there. So if someone has dealt with low T for a very long time and they just feel awful, it might be the time to consider going on replacement therapy, because that's really all it is. It's just replacing where you biologically should be. And if you can't get there and you've done all the lifestyle changes and you've taken your fish oil and your creatine and your multivitamin, like all that stuff, those are all good things. I have never seen somebody like massively increase their levels to a point where they're like, okay, like I feel that. Usually they feel good because they change their diet and they start exercising and all of that.
Right. And so, but for the person that is coming to you and they're like, like my testosterone levels are crap, and if I were honest, my lifestyle is also crap. When it comes to nutrition, the big rocks they should focus on are cutting out alcohol, prioritizing protein and whole foods most of the time, depending on what their goal of leanness is, getting rid of excess body fat. Is there anything else I missed as far as some of the things they should really focus on with that?
Prioritizing, good sleep hygiene, which means trying to get up at the same time every day, trying to get in bed and get yourself calming down relatively early. Don't stay up till 2 a.m. on weekends just because you can. That all has a compounding effect. But those are the major things. And I always say, like, the lifestyle stuff, nutrition and fat loss and all that stuff, it's really not complicated. It's actually very simple. It's the process that's hard, and it's the people that complicate the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough journey, right? For somebody to go from like just feeling really horrible about themselves to then having the confidence to change their health. It's tough, right? Because traditionally, like when people are in that situation, it's not like they're on top of the world. It's normally like,
oh God, no,
something's happened and they've hit that point where they're like, I've had enough. And it's like, how do you crawl out of that in a way that is sustainable?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes, one of the big wake up calls that a lot of guys deal with, and I have this discussion all the time with either clients or in my DMs, is the circle they surround themselves with. So they'll be like, it's my group, my friend group on the weekends. They give me a lot of shit for drinking or not wanting to go out or not wanting to eat this or that or the other thing. And I'm like, okay, so what if we maybe don't hang out with them for a couple weeks or make friends with other people at the gym? And they'll be like, well, I'll just lose all my friends. And I was like, let me ask you something. Are they truly your friends if they can't understand that you're trying to change your life for the better? Because to me, that's not the definition of a friend. And if you said that you had a health condition and couldn't drink, that would be perceived way different. than if it was like, no, I don't want to drink. Why is that? Why do people lose their mind? Like the minute someone says like, I want to get hammered tonight, like people cheer. But if someone's like, I don't want to drink at all and I want to get up and work out the next day, they're like that's such a foreign thing. So peer pressure is huge. Social pressure is huge. And I tell a lot of our guys, I'm like, listen, it's going to be very hard in the beginning. You're going to find yourself caving in. Totally normal, totally okay. It's kind of like you're building a muscle basically that is able to deal with other people socially. But what other people think and what other people say is not because of you, it's because of them. A lot of the times they're insecure about their inability to change their life due to things you're doing. So they're going to comment on it, very similar to people on the internet. Nobody is sitting there trolling someone because they're super happy with their life.
Right. You touched on like the ultimate reframe, right? Of when people are speaking negatively to you or encouraging you to make a decision that's not in line with, the best version of you, is like these people tend to be more unhappy with themselves and they feel like they can't stop. And that if you're able to stop, it's like some sort of personal attack on them because they're like, why can that person stop, but I can't? And so you're right. It's like typically the people who are feeling good about themselves aren't going to try and bring you down. I always say you should spend time with people that have common futures and not common pasts. Like identify, where you'll find those people who are going towards where you want to go, find those people and hang out with them. And that's why I believe like the gym is like the ultimate place for transformation. And it's because of typically people who are going to the gym are forward thinkers. They're looking to better themselves. They have goals. You never see anybody in the gym like, fighting or yelling at each other or making fun of each other. People are there to better themselves and to get stuff done. And you would be surprised at how kind people are and how willing people are to help you when you go up to them in a place like the gym.
Oh, 100%, especially early in the morning. Cause like those people are disciplined, to get up at that hour. I mean, it's actually a lot more fun if you surprise people when you do drink. Like I maybe drink twice a year. Everyone now is at the point they just assume I never drink. So if I go out and I'm in a situation, I'm like, yo, get me a Tito's. They're like, what? And then it's way more fun of a reaction than like, why aren't you drinking?
Right. Getting into the exercise component, what do you think are the big things people should focus on from to raise their testosterone naturally from a workout perspective?
100% lifting weights. I mean, I think we could agree on that. A big discussion I have, like I actually had 3 guys I talked to this weekend who did CrossFit and then a combination of like CrossFit with some sort of boot camp, like an Orange Theory type of thing. Which are all great, but I tell them like, I categorize that as cardio because the guy was telling me like it was a work period of 40 seconds and then a rest of 10. So I said with a 10-second rest, you basically have time to like put your weights down and move on to the next exercise. So it's very difficult to duplicate the intensity that you would put in for 40 full seconds. And that's why if you're performing a set of like heavy deadlifts or shoulder press or something like that, probably need, between 90 to 240 seconds of rest, which is a few minutes. But that's like this unknown land now. Like traditional weight training was not cool for a while. And then CrossFit was born and a lot of the high intensity and it makes people feel good. And I'm all for like, do what makes you feel good and that you'll actually do. So a lot of people like the camaraderie that comes with it and the social aspect. Fantastic. You don't have to give it up. But if you're going for a certain look or you do want to get the hormonal benefits from adding muscle to your frame and things like lifting weights, then you have to do something probably a little different. So a lot of people actually have never come from a traditional strength training background like they used to. Their first exposure to like organized exercise was a group class or something that was more higher intensity. And they could actually benefit from lowering the intensity to things that have longer rest periods with a strength training plan.
I mean, I do think there's definitely like a hierarchy of exercise. And I think like at the bottom, like if somebody's just looking to get moving, they haven't exercised in a while, they just want to find something they can kind of stick to for a bit, then I don't think it matters as much because it's like, okay, like any movement is better than no movement. Maybe they make some new friends, they get their heart rate up, they build some muscle that they didn't have because they haven't worked out in a while. But then I think as you raise up the hierarchy and you're like, all right, now I want to dial in like my hormones, I want to dial in my physique, I want to dial in my body fat percentage. Like then I think it becomes more important to take a deeper look at like what your actual workout program looks like.
100%. As soon as you want to change body composition specific, it does matter.
Yeah, because I was with, you and like a lot of people that are like, and I know you don't think Orange Theory or place like that are necessarily quote unquote crap, but I was like, man, like what's the point? It's a waste of time. Just, it's just, you're just doing like, you're just keeping your heart rate up for like an hour. It's just like doing cardio with weights or whatever. And the risk for injury is high. And then, somebody was like, well, what if it just gets them moving? And I was like, I guess you're right. Like that is true. Like if it keeps somebody moving from not moving, then obviously who am I to judge?
It depends, where somebody is in their journey. Like I've had people on Instagram DM me and they're like, where do I even start? And my first question is, well, what do you enjoy? And if they say nothing, then it's a harder conversation. But if they're like, oh, I like riding my bike, I like F45, whatever, knock yourself out. Because that will work until it doesn't, and you'll get something out of that. Like I would much rather somebody do that than go do a strength training program that they absolutely hate, and then they're turned off from exercise at all. Trying different forms helps. Like last year, I started pole dancing, which is completely out of my realm of like genius, so to speak. So I was like, all right, I need a hobby. It has to be active. It's going to be jujitsu or it's going to be pole dancing. I think I'll not get hurt if I do pole dancing. I was wrong, but it is hard as hell. And I'm like, holy shit, how does some of these girls get in these positions and all this stuff? I feel like I'm doing like meathead version because my flexibility sucks because I just love lifting heavy like all the time. But it has challenged me in ways where it's made me realize also like it put yourself in your client's shoes when they're starting something. Because at first I was like, I hate this, but I'm going to stay with it. And then I fell in love with it because I got better at it. And there's people who go to my studio that don't do weightlifting. And that's okay because they enjoy this. And it is a form of weightlifting. Like I don't have to do more than one upper body day a week because I get so much from the pole. So it helps you kind of check yourself a little bit to realize like, yeah, this is actually activity that can be purposeful. And if somebody's not looking to pack on a ton of muscle, they can get an extremely good upper body workout doing things that are not like conventional strength training too.
Right. So let's just say I'm coming to you and I'm like, I'm ready to do whatever you tell me as far as in the gym. What are you prescribing me, assuming I have no injuries, etc.?
If somebody is new to the gym, they'll probably be on a total body workout 3 days a week with cardio in between, just to give them recovery and kind of give their body exposure to multiple things. If somebody is experienced in the gym, but also is carrying a lot of body fat, it's kind of a very similar approach because you do want to get in a fair amount of the low intensity aerobic work, which works very well to not only strip fat off, but it's mostly to help recovery, help people help people use the food that they eat, like using carbohydrates and fats, and get them to sleep a lot better. So when they sleep better, they feel better, and then they're more likely to push harder in the gym. And then when somebody is kind of through that type of phase, we can go many different directions. We can do 4 days of upper lower. We can still do total body in that time frame. It depends if they do other activities. Do they play golf? Do they have kids sports on the weekends? We have some guys that are like, I need to be in the gym 7 days a week. And it's like, well, don't, but we could create stuff that will not have a negative impact on your recovery for everything else. So
And so obviously when it comes to building muscle, which is the importance of lifting weights, right? We're talking about, putting on some muscle mass to help, just for obvious reasons when it comes to your health, but also to help you reduce the amount of body fat you have, and your body fat percentage. It matters how you train. Like, so what types of things are you telling people when they're going into the gym, or what types of exercises, reps, sets, cadence, rest periods, etc.?
So a lot of people, I will say, have not gone to failure or trained hard. So they'll say, I train really hard. And that's part of the reason why we like videos. So if clients upload videos, we can provide feedback retroactively, because what we look for. So like, say you have a exercise where you're doing reps of 8 to 10. And on the 10th rep, it looks exactly the same as the first one. No sign of struggle. So probably can increase the load and or the reps. But because if we have someone in an 8 to 10 rep frame, probably want to go higher on the weight. So often people have not challenged themselves at the level that they feel they need to, where the last few reps look like you're not actually going to make that rep because it's a slow grind. So that has been game changing. And doing that, you can teach people to utilize different tempos. A lot of people have never even used it. They just go in the gym and they're like, going as fast as they can. And we're like, how about you take 3 to 4 seconds to lower that weight down? And it's like a whole new world. So that gets them to control it. It gets them to kind of feel it a little bit better. It also lowers the amount of load that they're using so that they could effectively recover and not just be sore all the time. So, it also, the rep range that they start at is going to be based off of what their starting point is and what the goal is and everything. So, but we don't typically go below 3 at the lowest unless somebody wants to do max reps. We have a pretty high training age for a lot of our clients. So we do have a lot of guys that like to max out and go below go to 1 to 3 reps. But for the general population, there's really no need to go below 5. So it'll probably be the lowest for most like Gen Pop people, because they're afraid of getting hurt, and controlling that amount of weight is also a concern too.
Right. But like, if you're prioritizing, like, I'm going to assume like compound movements, is that the goal? And then like, what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because people will also say, I can't deadlift, I can't squat because of X. And X is usually my back, my knees, my this, my that. And it doesn't mean that you have to pull off the floor or go right into a back squat. There's different variations of that. So we may have them do like Romanian deadlifts or single leg Romanians or rack pulls or deadlifting off blocks or trap bar. Like there's different versions of a deadlift, because you're going to be bending over, picking things up off the ground in life. So you don't want to be afraid of that. And then same with squatting. There's goblet squatting, there's front squatting, there's different variations that you can do that are a little safer than throwing a barbell on somebody's back.
Right. And so how many exercises would you say per like session, generally speaking, for a total body, would you say?
I did a total body workout the other day with 4 exercises, 5 sets, which is a lot of volume. So you don't need a lot of exercises, probably more between 5 to 7, 6 to 8, depending. Again, if it's a longer rest period, if it's more than 3 sets, then probably less exercises. Otherwise, we're looking at like a 2-hour workout.
And I think a lot of people get caught up in the specific exercises they should be doing when they really should just go in there and just train and focus on like doing the movement properly and with the right amount of intensity. Do you find that like that matters more? Like somebody who does a leg press with proper form and the right intensity will see more results than the person who goes in and does a back squat, half-assed, and it's just with complete poor form and bad intensity, right?
100%. You can write someone the most perfect program, and if they don't do it like consistently, and if they don't put effort into it, it's not really going to yield much. Or you have someone do like the absolute worst program, but they nail it. they're going to get a lot more out of it.
Right, totally. Any mistakes you see people make in the gym, other than you talked about the training till failure, you talked about like movement patterns with some of the exercises, anything else you see that people doing wrong in the gym that's hurting their gains?
Where do I start? I mean, I see it all the time, but I don't know where people's programs are. I mean, we all see like dumb stuff to us, but also when I go into my gym, I keep the thought in my head of like, you don't know the context, you don't know why somebody's doing what they're doing. Some things I think that they're just unaware that that's probably not the best thing for what they think it's doing. But a lot of the times, like, you know, if somebody's using like a 2.5 pound dumbbell and they're a dude and they're doing like a lateral raise, okay, maybe he just had surgery or something. Like, you don't know that. So I'm never like going in there judging anybody. I'm more like, okay, that's interesting. I wonder why they're doing what they're doing, but I'm sure there's a reason. When it comes to our clients, quite often they just pick, you know, loads that they probably are easy for them. So a lot of people think the exercises should change more often than they need to. They think that there should be more, like 4 exercises. If you don't look at like what it entails, could be like, oh, that looks easy. And then you get in the gym, you're like, it's like so hard. Like my coach does that to me. And yes, I have a coach because even though I've been coaching for 25 years, having that objective view is always great. And I think a lot of people still subscribe to like Monday chest day, Tuesdays back, Wednesdays legs, and they don't realize that there are ways to attack a training program much differently, so you don't have to do only one body part a day. So that's what a lot of guys associate traditional strength training with, is body part isolation, which can be one way, but it doesn't have to be.
Well, and specifically if you have like, if you're injury prone or you've had rotator cuff issues or stuff with like your shoulder and stuff, like going in and doing a heavy chest day and just pounding your shoulder joint, it's just not the best thing.
No, and that reminds me of a mistake guys make. They only flat bench. They never incline, ever. It's hard, and I get it, but that is what can cause shoulder problems. Because if you think like, if you're only doing this all the time, so you're only working this range, you're never working this range, you're never working this range, you're never working this range, and then overhead, well, you're going to have more strength in certain areas and planes of motion than others. So something's likely going to give. So getting guys to actually, you know, work in this whole range versus just flat really helps them realize, oh, I have actually more equal development in my chest and shoulders and lats, because they were trying to get it just by bench pressing, which barbell bench pressing is not like the best chest builder. Dumbbells are a little better. You can get more stretch, but there's like 100 different chest exercises, but not just flat.
Yeah, I mean, you have to mix it up and you have to do what people aren't doing, right? You know, you have to like just kind of think outside the box. I mean, I think, you know, incline dumbbell press is like one of the best exercises you can do for your upper body.
100%. There's kids at my gym. I call them kids. They're like in their 20s, but they're always complaining about their shoulders. And I'm like, because all you do is bench press flat. So I literally challenged one of them. I was like, do me a favor, start doing dumbbell incline for a few weeks and then come back to the bench. And of course, he's like, Allie, my shoulder pain's gone. I'm like, wow, amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Is there anything you've seen like from a workout perspective that can help men target like the problem areas? You talked about the love handles, you talked about lower back fat, lower abdomen fat. I mean, I know you can't quote unquote spot reduce, but I mean, do you think that working abs or anything like that can help with the appearance of the way you look?
Traditionally, the thought is not. Everyone's like, abs are made in the kitchen. However, you will find that like if you have never challenged that area, so if say you didn't play sports, you've basically been very sedentary, you're not going to have the same type of ab development. Like you have to actually work that area. So I do think that does contribute to that as guys lose body fat, to get the separation and see like the packs of the 6-pack. there's got to be some muscular development to that. And it's funny because like when you get people who don't have that, then you're like, oh, like we actually should start doing some of that. Traditionally, like a lot of coaches will say like, you know, don't even worry about abs. Like I get my ab work from like front squats and, you know, that's great and all, but you don't have to do it as often as other muscles. Like I maybe do one ab exercise like a week, maybe. So it's not something I really focus on, like doing multiple exercises of, because I've had exposure to sports and a lot of different things over the years. But somebody who never has, like, yes, they should definitely do ab exercises. Does that mean that's going to reduce fat in that one area? Not necessarily. Diet will drive that, but when that body fat does come down, the appearance that they want will be more prominent with the development of that area.
Right. Anything else that you think people should include in their exercise like protocol as far as raising their testosterone other than what we've already discussed?
I think most men shy away from doing aerobic work because they don't like it. I've talked about this a lot of the times, or they overdo it in the sense of like high intensity work because that's been what their focus is and they tend to feel that more. But there is a huge benefit to getting a baseline of doing that Netflix boring cardio, because the more aerobically fit someone is, the better they'll sleep at night. So instant correlation, when we have somebody on an aerobic block, their resting heart rate comes down. It's one of the best ways to decrease blood pressure, but their sleep quality also improves. Their recoverability, not only in between sets, but in between workouts. So like in between a set, like if you do a really heavy set of like one arm dumbbell rows and you're like dying before you even switch to the next arm, that ability to switch to the next arm quickly without feeling like you've just climbed a flight of stairs, you know, comes down by getting more aerobically fit. And then your body will teach itself to process carbohydrates and fats a lot better. So then you get to eat more. And then when you get to eat more, everything just works better if you're supporting the activity. So then you're putting on good muscle tissue. You're not starving your body. Your body has more likelihood to have more optimal testosterones working that way. So when I tell guys, well, cardio is anabolic, kind of hits home. And then when I say, well, cardio will actually help your erections, it really hits home.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because there's also been a movement over the last few years that, you know, cardio, if you do too much cardio, it eats away at muscle mass. But I'm glad you brought that up because I think cardio is very important to include for your heart health, lowering blood pressure and stuff like that.
Yes. Those are the health benefits, you know, because a lot of guys think, yeah, it'll eat my muscle, or, you know, if I'm on a bulk, I shouldn't do any cardio. In fact, you could actually do a ton of aerobic work during a bulk, like very low intensity, and it'll actually make you feel better eating more calories. But, you know, for the most part, if you're an ultra endurance athlete and you're like running across the United States and that's what you're training for, then you might be leaner, but that's typically not what we're dealing with. We're just saying, hey, do like a half hour. You know, nowadays they call it zone 2, call it zone 2. I don't care. Just do it.
Anything else that you'd like to add that you think is important in the context of our conversation around testosterone?
No, we covered a lot.
Yeah, we covered it all. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I think this is going to be a really valuable episode and really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You got it.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I really think you're going to like this video as well. I'll see you there.